The town of Lund in southern Sweden isn't often the focus of global media attention. Extra police from all over the country have been brought in to provide protection for the papal visit. At Lund Cathedral, where a joint Lutheran Catholic service will take place, altar boys and bishops have been busy rehearsing. The head of the World Lutheran Federation says the ceremony marks a major turning point in Christian relations. Wars over religion once tore Northern Europe apart, but today Sweden and other majority Protestant countries are largely secular. Religion isn't a part of daily life for many Swedes.
I was trying to explain who the Pope was, and I was saying, do you know who God is? Nah, doesn't know that. Do you know who the Pope is? No. And then I'm saying, like, do you know who Dragonite is, the Pokemon? He's like, yes, I know that. And pretty much would say that sums up Sweden. We're not that religious.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Matt for the Remnant Forum. Hurricane Francis continues to tear up what's left of the Catholic Church, visiting Lund, Sweden today in order to recognize that all of those positive aspects of the Reformation sparked by Martin Luther need to be celebrated. Here's a little video clip. Take a look.
Now we call upon all Catholic and Lutheran parishes and communities to be bold and creative, to be joyful and hopeful in their commitment to continue the great journey ahead of us. His Holiness Pope Francis and the LWF President Bishop Yonan will now sign the joint statement as an expression of the commitment of our two communions.
Francis held this joint prayer service in the Lutheran Cathedral of Lund, where he also said both Lutheran and Catholic churches should mend past errors and seek mutual forgiveness. Quote, "We too must look with love and honesty at our past, recognizing error and seeking forgiveness, for God alone is our judge." End quote. No kidding, Francis. So how about you stop judging everybody from, all of us traditional Catholics to conservative Catholics to pretty much everybody that came before you? How about you stop judging all of them as not living up to your standards of what it means to be a Catholic? Francis was speaking in the cathedral, by the way, which was confiscated from the Catholics in the 16th century. I don't know if that came up or not. In his address during the joint prayer service, Francis acknowledged the good that came from Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation. Quote, "With gratitude we acknowledge that the Reformation helped give greater centrality to sacred scripture in the Catholic Church's life." End quote. Holy mackerel, what is this man doing? It's just unbelievable. Good news is that the attendance seemed pretty low. The turnout was low, as most of the world, I think, is beginning to see through this media hound Pope of ours, who really is becoming something of a cartoonish caricature even of himself these days. He just can't seem to get enough of Francis. And perhaps the most appropriate reaction to today's ecumenical brouhaha in Sweden, one of the world's most secular nations, and by the way, thanks to trickle-down Lutheranism, perhaps the most important reaction or pertinent reaction came from a group of several hundred students laying around outside the cathedral there in Lund, some of them wearing papal hats, all of them drinking copious amounts of beer, and pretty much mocking the obvious media stunt that was going on inside. Somehow that seems quite appropriate. "We Swedes are not that religious," said Sebastian Nielsen, a 23-year-old student who kind of nails it right there. Not that religious in Sweden. So this is obviously a media stunt. And in other words, nobody cares, Francis. Really, nobody cares. We all see what's going on here, and I think that the world is getting tired of it. So, Chris Ferrara, who joins us from his home in Virginia, what do you think, Chris? Is Pope Francis's reign of spiritual terror finally and mercifully beginning to run its course?
The whole thing is a mockery. He may have been validly elected, but as far as serious Catholics are concerned, this Pope is out there on his own, doing whatever he wants to do, saying whatever he wants to say, thinking whatever he wants to think. It's all about him. It's all about what Antonio Socci has so rightly called Bergoglianism.
Yeah.
His rendition of the Catholic faith through the prism of the liberal Jesuit who is caught in a time warp back in the early 70s when he was formed as a Jesuit. This papacy is, quite simply, an ongoing joke. But it's a joke with some very serious implications for the structure of the church, for the adherence of the faithful to the most basic teachings of the church on faith and morals, particularly in the area of sexual morality, where it seems he's declared an amnesty, or he's attempting to declare an amnesty.
Yeah, Chris, he seems to be actively trying to destroy what's left of the church, saying that the church has to change. It sounds like Hillary Clinton. She's saying the same thing. The church needs to change. We have to let public adulterers receive communion. We've got to lighten up on gay unions. And now he's celebrating, incredibly, celebrating Martin Luther, the guy who hated the Mass, who hated the papacy, who hated the priesthood. I mean, what are we looking at here, Chris? Is this an anti-pope in the making scenario? Or what is it?
I really don't care what label you apply to him at this point. He simply isn't behaving in the manner of a vicar of Christ. He's behaving, and again, Antonio Socci has pointed this out, he's attacking the church. You have a pope who's attacking the church for the sake of establishing his own confused, self-contradictory, but ultimately, always, in every case, liberalized Jesuit vision of the church, again, coming out of the 1970s. You know, something he said before he left about this ridiculous event in Lund, Sweden, is that Lutherans and Catholics are kept apart by fears. No, they aren't. They're kept apart because Lutherans don't believe in the most fundamental teachings of the church, even on matters of natural law. We're kept apart because Lutherans believe that children can be murdered in the womb. We're kept apart because Lutherans believe that divorce and remarriage are perfectly acceptable to God, that contraception is perfectly acceptable to God, that sodomy and unions based upon sodomy are perfectly acceptable to God. There isn't the least prospect of unity with the Lutherans, and it has nothing to do with fears. It has to do with their absolute decrepitude as a degenerated Protestant sect, which is the direct offspring of Lutheranism and its fragmentation of Christian civilization, and its ultimate consequence being the secularization of the nation state and what we have today in Sweden.
Yes.
It's basically a secularized, post-Christian, atheist state, and this is where he goes to ride around in his little golf cart in the stadium after this ridiculous joint prayer service with people masquerading in clerical costumes, including a lady bishop. What a mockery, what a joke.
The whole thing is, Chris, and I want to read you a quote, and then I want to get your response. It comes from Cardinal Kurt Cook, the president of the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity, and he said this about this event. He says, quote, "This event, which is to mark a milestone, reflects the progress made over 50 years of international Catholic Lutheran dialogue established after the important decisions made by Vatican Council II. The dialogue has helped the two traditions to understand each other better. It has, get this, it has affirmed the common conviction that what unites Catholics and Lutherans matters more than what divides them." End quote. Chris, I thought that what divided Catholics and Lutherans is the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Is this man actually saying that unity and ecumenism and dialogue are more important and more unifying than Christ? So Christ is too divisive for the ecumenical movement now and he should be set aside?
I'd like to know what it is that actually unites us on any level with Lutherans, who, again, are in favor of child murder, divorce and remarriage, contraception, sodomy, the ordination of women and homosexuals, practicing homosexuals, in homosexual unions as so-called Lutheran clergy. Nothing unites us to this crackpot collection of sects called the Lutheran World Federation. In fact, the more serious Lutherans, who are the kind of Lutherans that Luther would recognize as vaguely Christian, such as the Missouri Synod Lutherans, want nothing to do with the loony World Federation of Lutherans. They want nothing to do with this whole ecumenical journey, which is a journey into oblivion. There is no prospect whatsoever of Christian unity with these evil crackpots masquerading as clerics. Anyone with any Catholic sense left can see that this is a diabolical mockery of the only way to true Christian unity, which Pius XI laid down in Mortalium Animos, stating the obvious. The only way to Christian unity is for everyone to be a Catholic, to belong to the one true church, the only church that Christ established. And here is this, I have to say it, loony Roman pontiff gallivanting all over the world, blathering on airplanes, going to these ridiculous ceremonies, riding around in his little papal golf cart. I don't know what to say about it at this point that hasn't already been said, except that it's getting worse by the day. We know he just purged the congregation for divine worship of every single member except the head, Cardinal Sarah. He couldn't get rid of Sarah because that would be a bit too obvious even for him. So he put Sarah into powerless isolation by sacking every single member of the CDF, including Cardinal Burke and Scola and Ulay and Ranjith, perhaps the most conservative of them all, very sympathetic to the Society of St. Pius X, and replacing them with a pack of Francis-certified Bergoglian liberals who are all in favor of admitting public adulterers to Holy Communion. What can we say about this madness that we haven't said?
No,
again, it's getting worse. That's what we can say. Worse by the day.
It's getting worse, and getting rid of Cardinal Sarah, for example. I mean, the Cardinal got himself in trouble when he called for Ad Orientem, last month, I think it was. And I hate to even suggest this, but I am still so mystified by the fact that Papa Bergoglio will not genuflect at the consecration of the Mass. And of course, it seems like, as we see now over in Lund in Sweden, that the idea of the divisive nature, if you will, of the Catholic versus Lutheran understanding of the real presence, that's being glossed over, Chris. And then you see the Pope himself not even genuflecting near the consecration, and you wonder, is that part of the ecumenical effort on some level to show that the Eucharist really isn't that important?
Speaking of the ecumenical effort, he himself admitted that it was not his intention to celebrate Mass for the 150,000 or so Catholics in Sweden, because that would be too sectarian a gesture, and those who insisted that he celebrate Mass for Catholics were being so sectarian, and this is narrow-minded and rigid. He's there only for ecumenical outreach. But then, he said, I reflected on my role as shepherd of the Catholic Church, and I decided, yes, maybe I should say Mass after all. Is this even believable? What's going on with this Roman pontiff? It's even more bizarre than what's going on with the American election, by the way. It seems that it's Halloween all over. Halloween in the church, Halloween in civil society, especially in America, and of course in Europe too, where there's a re-Islamization going on at astonishing speed, and the European Union is collapsing under the weight of it. Where do you begin with this madness reigning in every sphere of our lives, church and state?
Yeah, isn't this New World Order, post-Christian epoch interesting? I mean, they really got it going on, don't they? The whole world seems to be blowing up. But wouldn't it be nice, two things, wouldn't it be nice to see something happen in the Catholic Church, like what we see with this Trump phenomenon, where people are just fed up, they're done, they're not taking it anymore, and they're basically forcing some mighty powerful institutions, liberal institutions, the media, Hollywood, the rest, to fall. And this thing called Donald Trump runs into it, and he's taken over. I wish the same would happen with the church. I wish Cardinal Burke, I wish Bishop Schneider. Bishop Schneider's out there doing so much, God bless him. But I wish more of the decent bishops that are left would do something similar. And I know you agree with me on that, but given what you just said, the implosion of the church, the state, everywhere is insane. The Vatican is in disarray. Briefly, do you think this is a good time for the Society of St. Pius X to sign up with old Papa Bergoglio?
At this point, who knows? Who knows? I mean, you yourself have said that they seem so intent on doing it themselves, at least most of the leadership, that what difference would it make at this point? You've already essentially dumbed down your message and quieted your opposition to the madness that's reigning in the post-conciliar church, so you might as well just become another regularized order and go that way. On the other hand, you could argue that if they do this, they're putting themselves under the thumb of the same Pope who was just raided and destroyed the Congregation for the Doctrine for divine worship, replacing everybody in it with certified liberals who just sacked everybody in the marriage and family apparatus in the Vatican. Everyone that was even remotely conservative is gone now and been replaced by, again, pro-communion for divorced and remarried acolytes of Francis. So I don't know what to say about it. At this point, I guess prudence would dictate you at least call a halt to the whole project and wait to see what happens with this pontificate. It's only going downhill, though, at this point.
We don't really even have a word for it. People want to throw anti-pope, they want to throw false prophet around, they want to call...
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what label.
Around. It doesn't really. You're right. This is such a massive apocalyptic mess that we're in right now. That whatever particular camp or group or label you want to use is irrelevant. This is bigger than all of it. Let's talk for just a moment. Let's talk politics. I assume you're going to be voting. You're going to be voting next week. You want to tell us who you're going to vote for, or where you standing?
Oh, gee, let us see. For whom shall I vote? After agonizing over this, Mike, I've decided that I have to vote for someone who would prevent the election of a demon from hell. That would be Trump, I think. Yes, I think I'll be voting for Donald J. Trump. Well, let's cut right to the heart of the matter. I don't care what he says about rebuilding the infrastructure, doing good things for education, returning it to the localities, homeschooling, the Johnson Amendment. I don't care about any of that. I care about one thing above all. The other things are, I don't want to slight them, they're important issues. I care about one thing above all, that the election of Donald Trump will prevent that demon in human form from occupying the White House. What are the American people thinking? Can't they see what a demonic character this woman is? This soulless, robotic manifestation of the worst evils in American society. I mean, Trump had the best line of all. I don't know why he doesn't keep repeating it. He said it during one of his rambling stump speeches at one of the rallies. He said, "Isn't it about time that we got the Clintons out of our lives?" Why doesn't he just keep saying that? That's what this comes down to. How in heaven's name can the American people even contemplate installing her in the White House along with her still degenerate husband, who's still engaging in sexual relations in their house, according to Colin Powell, with women who are not his wife, as we learned from one of the WikiLeaks email dumps. How can the American people countenance this? Even the worst dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. One of them just defected. I forget his name, the pollster who was on CNN all the time.
Yeah.
He said, I was a Hillary supporter, but this recent revelation with the reopened FBI investigation, we're looking at a constitutional crisis. She's going to be under several criminal investigations, even if she gets elected. And he just said, look, at this point, I'm no longer a Hillary supporter. That's a Democrat. I think the polls are collapsing for her everywhere now at this point.
You know, only in America could we be seriously considering voting for someone who's under investigation by the FBI on several levels. But I know you've heard this analogy. I want to throw it out for the sake of our viewers, and then I want you to comment because we just put it in the print edition of the Remnant under an article written by Vincent Chiarella where he talks about Flight 93. He says, this is the election of Flight 93, the one that crashed in Pennsylvania on September 11, 2001. And the analogy, I think, is perfect. We're in the back of this plane. We know it's been taken over by the bad guys. The bad guys are going to take this plane and fly it into the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol or the White House. They're going to do a lot of damage. They're going to kill people. They're going to fly it into the heart of our political power. And you're in the back of the plane. You say, okay, let's charge the cockpit. We have to do something. And the question comes up, wait a minute, the leader of the people that want to charge the cockpit doesn't know how to fly a plane. And what do you say? Okay, well then let's just sit down and wait because we don't have a pilot on board that can go charge the cockpit. And the analogy, I think, is very good. You charge the cockpit anyway. And then you take your chances on trying to land that plane somewhere else in safety because you know what's going to happen if you let the bad guys continue to fly the plane. They're going to crash and everyone's going to die.
It's more than a desperate charge in the cockpit. I like the analogy, but we can do better than that. Let's just take the Supreme Court issue alone. Don't tell me that the Republicans have betrayed us when it comes to the Supreme Court. Okay, so there was a misfire with Kennedy, and then there was a misfire with Harriet Miers. But after the misfire with Harriet Miers, Bush, suitably chastened by the people who elected him, gave us Roberts and Alito. They're waiting for the fifth justice in the mold of Scalia that Trump has practically bound himself to give us from the list of 20 names he gave us. Every one of those justices would join that 5-4 majority to roll back some of these insane decisions, including the Obergefell decision, which fastened gay marriage on the backs of all 50 states. The Windsor case, which struck down the domestic marriage, the federal domestic definition of marriage act. Of course, Roe versus Wade, which Pence's vow will end up on the ash heap of history. We just need one more justice. We'll probably get 2 or 3 from him if he's elected during those 4 years, because the liberals are practically on life support on that court. They're all in their 70s or 80s.
Right,
that alone is a compelling reason to vote for Trump.
It sure is, Chris, and I'm glad you brought up Harriet Miers. This is what we're talking about. We're not voting for St. Donald Trump. When Harriet Miers when they tried to slip her in because Bush was weak and he was centrist and everything else, what happened? The constituency that he represents stood up and objected to such an extent that eventually Harriet Miers steps aside and we get a better justice. This is what we're talking about. We're not voting for St. Donald Trump. We're voting for that constituency of decent Americans that he represents, powerful conservatives, people who are pro-life, who he has to answer to once he's in office. And that's what I meant before about the analogy, because we already have the folks on our side who agree with what you just said about the Supreme Court, about abortion, about the border protection, about all the good things that he's talking about. But there are a lot of people who are on the fence, and what they're essentially saying is, you haven't seen the Access Hollywood tape. You don't realize what he said about women. We can't vote for a man who said that about women. And it's to these people that we apply that analogy of Flight 93. These people have to realize that it's not Donald Trump the saint that we're voting for. We're not saying he's a wonderful man. That's not what this is all about. It's what he's going to have to do in order to get reelected once he gets elected, if he gets elected, that we're talking about.
Look, we have an issue that's a bit more important. We have several issues that are a bit more important than whether Donald Trump is a guttermouth who has low morals in the area of sexuality. I mean, I would say the majority of congressmen can be placed into that category. Let me give you a concrete example of the Supreme Court issue. And by the way, that was 10 years ago, the tape on the bus. The man is 70 now. Yeah. Can't we presume that he's undergone a certain maturation? Maybe this child man has grown up between the ages of 60 and 70. Maybe he sees that at 70, he's facing his day of judgment. He himself said, if I get the Johnson Amendment repealed, that might be the only way I'll get to heaven. At least he's thinking of heaven. At least he mentions heaven. Maybe we have another King David on our hand, a reformed adulterer. I don't know. But let me give you a concrete example on the Supreme Court issue. The court has just accepted for review the bathroom wars case out of the Fourth Circuit, where the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals overruled the lower court's determination that a girl cannot be mandated to use the boys' bathroom just because she thinks she's a boy. The Fourth Circuit overruled the trial court's common sense decision that Title IX doesn't prevent discrimination against so-called transgenders because transgender is a category that doesn't exist in the law. The Fourth Circuit overturned that and has now held that Title IX allows girls to use the boys' bathroom and boys to use the girls' bathroom if that's what they think they are, the opposite sex. This is absolute insanity. The court has accepted it for review. What does that mean? We have 8 justices on the court now. That means the minimum 4 required voted to grant certiorari. It takes only 4 of the 9 justices. So now this case is coming before a divided court. The 4 who granted cert would probably be the conservatives on the court. The 4 conservatives, including Roberts and Alito. And they're thinking, well, if Trump gets elected, we'll have the 5th justice to overturn this ridiculous decision. And if Clinton is elected, well, we'll take our chances with her, but we've got to at least bet on the prospect that Trump will get elected. Now, if she gets elected, she's going to stack the court with liberal ideologues, and we're going to have the Fourth Circuit's decision affirmed. Now we're going to have transgenderism as a protected category under Title IX. We're going to have federally subsidized abortion upheld in the United States Supreme Court if it's challenged. Every abortion restriction enacted by the states henceforth, if she's elected, will be struck down as unconstitutional by her ideologically stacked court. Wake up!
Absolutely, and I can hear our critics right now, and we're running out of critics, so I think most people realize what they have to do next week. But I can still hear some of the critics say, oh, there's Ferrara and Matt again, drinking the Kool-Aid. Don't they understand? Donald Trump is an opportunist. His name is on everything. He's not going to do anything for anybody because it's all about Donald Trump. What's the matter with you guys? He's the consummate politician, blah, blah, blah. To which I say, and I think you agree, if Donald Trump doesn't come through with even half of his promises, that's kind of expected. But if he does even a quarter of them, the country is still better off than under under Hillary Clinton and her perverse husband back in the White House.
I don't understand these, frankly, moronic commentators who try to make a case that the election of Hillary Clinton is somehow morally preferable. Just take the issue of war. She's called for a no-fly zone over Syria. Is she out of her mind? A no-fly zone over Syria? Who flies over Syria? Russian MiGs. Is she proposing to shoot down Russian MiGs to keep the Russians from assisting Assad in his attempt to prevent radical Islamic militants from taking over in Syria? That's the American foreign policy? Shoot down Russian MiGs in order to ensure the ascendancy of radical Islam in Syria. That's her foreign policy. What could be more lunatical? I don't get it.
Yeah.
What is wrong with these people?
And don't forget, she voted for the Iraq War to begin with, so we know she's a hawk. Don't anybody try to fool themselves that she's not a hawk. She is.
Well, Trump said it. He said, with Hillary, you're going to get World War III.
Yeah, no, it's to me it's so obvious, and I think that I hope our viewers understand that what we're saying. We're not saying he's a saint. We're not saying he's perfect. Quite the opposite. We know that he's not. And like I say, if he wants to get reelected, he has to make sure he appeases the pro-life, pro-family, pro-constitution base. And Hillary Clinton has to appease Planned Parenthood. That's it.
The Supreme Court for me is 80% of the ball game. If he puts one or two and perhaps as many as three Scalia-type justices on the court, we have an enormous stopgap against the further advance of the dictatorship of relativism, as Pope Benedict called it. And we have a really good shot at reversing Roe versus Wade if the appropriate case comes before the court. We only need 5-4. He could give us 6-3 in certain configurations, depending on how many justices retire and how many he gets to appoint. And I don't have any doubt that he's going to keep at least that promise. There's just no way he's going to give us a liberal when he's given us a list already of 20 more or less certified conservatives, at least conservatives by American standards, in the mold of Scalia and Thomas. He said that over and over again. That in itself compels us to vote for him, as opposed to the demon from the pit of hell in human form called Hillary Clinton.
You're absolutely right. Let's not forget how fast this is moving along. When Barack Obama came into the White House, you remember his position on marriage? It was one man and one woman, remember?
Right.
And look what we've done in 8 years. Imagine what they're going to do. And by they, I mean Hillary, Barack, the whole team of them, Soros and the rest, what they're going to do if they get another 8 years. So let's. I don't know if we're going to be up to it, but maybe next Wednesday we'll meet again and have a post-election program to go over what happened. Hopefully we're going to be talking about something good or better than Hillary Clinton.
Well, I hope we'll be basking in the joy of being able to say, "Ding dong, the wicked witch is dead at last. We're free from the dead hand of the Clinton dynasty." Boy, what a joyous occasion that will be. That in itself is reason to vote for Trump.
All right, we'll pray for that, and then we'll meet next week and hopefully celebrate that.
Pray to Our Lady, patroness of the Americas.
All right, my friend. We'll talk to you then. Thanks very much.
Take care, Mike.
Bye-bye. That'll do it for us, folks. I'm Michael Matt for the Remnant Forum. Please stop by remnantnewspaper.com, well, a lot and often this week, since we're going to be covering everything that's happening, whether it's the Pope's visit to Sweden or this incredibly bizarre election process here in the United States. Thanks very much. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.